It's pathetic to see the talentless licking each other's wounds. Liam, don't ever show your face in front of me again. My boss, Shane, framed me at the company I work for, and without any chance to defend myself. I was transferred to a branch office on a remote island. The situation at the new post was terrible, with a dark atmosphere and no one having any motivation. However, something happened that significantly changed my perspective. Rachel, the department head, looked at me in astonishment as I achieved a month's worth of targets in a single day. "Who exactly are you?" What followed was an unexpected and shocking turn of events. My name is Liam. I'm a 37-year-old single, ordinary office worker at a large corporation. By the time you're in your late 30s, most of your friends are married with kids. Some even started families right after high school, so it's not uncommon to hear that their kids are about to become adults. It's not that I didn't want to get married, I just wasn't cut out for romance. I had a girlfriend once, but our values clashed as I prioritized work while she prioritized her personal life, leading to frequent conflicts. In the end, she disappeared without a word, and our relationship naturally faded away. Since then, I've lived alone, feeling like my work was my partner. I joined my current company 5 years ago through a connection, so I still feel like a newbie. Despite that, I have reliable juniors and colleagues I can trust, making me feel blessed in terms of human relationships. I find my work fulfilling and can leverage my strengths, so there's no problem. I vaguely wished these ordinary days would continue forever. Then, one day, my life took a significant turn because of one person. First, let me explain why I changed jobs in my 30s. Though I don't have a new family of my own, I have my mother. My father passed away from an illness when I was young, so I don't have many memories of him. My mother, despite being frail, raised me single-handedly after my father's death, ensuring I never struggled. I'm deeply grateful to her. However, before I could show my gratitude, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, often called the silent killer, and passed away. This reminded me of something. When my father died, I was in elementary school, and my mother told me I wanted to become a superhero who could save people in pain. Essentially, a doctor. I studied hard from that point, and my mother supported me by sending me to a tutoring center. I wanted to attend a private middle school, but I didn't want to burden my mother. I believed that as long as I studied hard, I could become a doctor, even in public middle and high schools. So I aimed to progress while keeping costs low. However, I experienced a setback and never achieved my dream of becoming a doctor. Becoming a doctor isn't easy. Even if you become a doctor, there's no guarantee you'll become a competent one. After facing numerous obstacles and setbacks, I gave up on the medical field and decided to work as an ordinary office worker. I loved math enough to choose a science and math-focused high school, and I was close friends with someone attending a technical college. So I taught myself programming. By the time I was a student, I had the skills to create my own games. This skill is now useful in my current company. Although I had no practical experience in the IT industry, I was rigorously trained by my seniors for a few months, and after 5 years, it has become my strength. The connection that led me to this company was a friend from the technical college recommending me. And I passed the screening and interviews on my own. Of course, large corporations aren't easy to get into through connections alone. So, I take pride in getting in on my own merit. Although I'm 37, I've only been with the company for 5 years, so I don't have any positions yet and am still a regular employee. In my previous job, I was entrusted with significant responsibilities. So I'm content with the current environment where I just need to do my assigned tasks well. One day, something happened. Mason, our section chief, resigned due to personal reasons at the end of the previous year. And Shane took over from this April. I work at the headquarters, but we have branches all over the US. Shane, who had been the manager at this branch, was promoted to section chief at the headquarters due to his exceptional skills. I was assigned to the system development section of the systems department. Shane's programming skills were so impressive that when I saw his efficient and clean source code, I couldn't help but say, wow. The system development section was buzzing with excitement over having such a talented individual join, but soon tension began to fill the air. This was because Shane distinguished employees based on their capabilities. Being highly capable himself, Shane looked down on employees who weren't as skilled, almost as if they were something dirty. He was incredibly kind to employees who were quick and produced high-quality work, like the senior who had taught me. But he was harsh and sometimes outright unreasonable to those who didn't meet his standards. I believed that with patient guidance and practical experience, anyone could grow, as that had been my own experience. But Shane dismissed this as a waste of time and cost. He continued working with those who could keep up with him and relegated those who couldn't do menial tasks, saying they were just in the way. As a regular employee with average performance, I didn't catch much of Shane's attention. However, the incident with my colleague Jessica plunged me into a downward spiral. Jessica had joined the company as a mid-career hire just 6 months ago. She was very meticulous and had a pleasant demeanor, which earned her respect from Mason as well. But because Jessica's thoroughness made her slow, sometimes taking twice as long as others. Mason said about that, "She's only been with us a short time and will grow with experience." However, to Shane, who prioritized efficiency, Jessica became a nuisance and, unfortunately, was chosen as the target of his sarcasm. Shane would call Jessica out at every opportunity. He would then unnecessarily berate her in front of everyone, loudly pointing out even minor mistakes like typos. At first, Jessica endured it, but she eventually reached her breaking point and began to cry. The other employees, knowing that speaking up would only make things worse, looked on helplessly. Shane then sighed dramatically and said, "Crying won't fix anything. I don't play favorites based on gender. You're being scolded because you're incompetent." Jessica's shoulders trembled, and she bit her lip in humiliation. Jessica certainly wasn't trying to use her tears to gain sympathy. But being spoken to like that must have deeply hurt her pride. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, I intervened. "Shane, that's enough. This approach is wrong. Yelling at someone in front of everyone won't make them work faster. Please show some consideration." This consideration included not only Jessica but also the other employees who were silently enduring the situation. However, Shane was angered by my defiance. In short, I became his new target. Even though he had previously paid no attention to me, he started scrutinizing my background after my intervention. He discovered that I had only been with the company for 5 years and had been recommended by a friend. He took advantage of that and started calling me recommendation rookie. My colleagues, who had shared many experiences with me over the past 5 years, did not call me that and supported me. But I am only human. Being called that made me feel bad, and employees from other departments who didn't know the full story started to look at me with disdain. Although my friend tried to explain, Shane's influence was too strong. As a result, I became ostracized outside of the system development section, and Shane delivered the final blow. He took away all the work I had diligently been doing. His reason was simple: he said he couldn't trust me. If Shane had been an incompetent person, it would have been easier, but unfortunately, he was an elite. Clients had no problem with Shane taking over my responsibilities, so they didn't complain. Upper management assumed that I had abandoned my work and Shane was picking up the slack. Consequently, I was exiled. I was reassigned to a branch on a remote island I had never heard of. In effect, it was a demotion, and I felt lost about what to do next. But time waits for no one. I had to completely hand over my current tasks by the end of the month, move by mid-next month, and start working by the end of the month. Despite being overwhelmed with work, I managed to complete the necessary procedures by the end of the month. As I was saying my goodbyes to the employees, Jessica approached me with an apologetic look on her face. "I'm really sorry that you got pushed out because of me, Liam. It's my fault for not doing my job properly and not standing up for you. I'm truly sorry," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Of course, none of this was Jessica's fault. I never thought that my transfer was because of her. Instead, I convinced myself that it was my own fault for standing up to Shane without thinking. "It's not your fault, Jessica. It's my lack of ability that's the problem." Just then, a voice called out from behind. "It's pathetic to see the talentless licking each other's wounds. Liam, I never want to see your face again. Don't show up at the headquarters unless you have a reason. Even if you do, don't talk to me." After saying this, Shane snorted and walked away. A tense atmosphere filled the room, so I forced a smile and tried to part with everyone amicably. Soon after, I resolved to somehow achieve results at the new branch and return to the headquarters. I wanted to prove the upper management wrong for this unreasonable transfer and restore the honor of my friends who had been disgraced because of me. With these feelings, I arrived at the branch on the remote island, but the reality was far harsher than I expected. Caught up in my busy schedule, I hadn't researched much about this branch, but I discovered a shocking truth. This branch had the lowest sales in the entire country. As soon as I stepped into the office, I understood why. The employees looked gloomy and unmotivated. The heavy atmosphere and lackluster conversations made me mutter under my breath, "This is unbelievable." Despite the situation, I introduced myself, but an employee responded, "Just keep it simple, that's how we do things here." Which left me even more perplexed. Then, a clear voice echoed in my ears. "You must be Liam, the new recruit. I've heard about you. Let's do our best together." Turning around, I saw a tall, beautiful woman, almost as tall as I am, standing there. Her name was Rachel. She was the head of the systems department at this remote island branch. Unlike the other unmotivated employees, Rachel seemed full of energy and enthusiasm. After 2 months of working under Rachel, I learned the ropes of the job here. And I realized something important. Rachel was incredibly competent at her job, with no flaws in that regard. However, there was one thing that bothered me. Rachel's enthusiasm seemed to be misdirected. Unlike the headquarters, where there was a separate sales department, the remote island branch's sales division was integrated into the systems department. Rachel ended up doing sales rounds because the sales staff lacked motivation. While Rachel's client interactions weren't bad, her proposals seemed too focused on boosting the company's sales. I felt she wasn't genuinely connecting with the clients, and it seemed they sensed it too. As a result, even good proposals lacked the decisive impact, and clients were hesitant to agree. This pattern repeated several times, and I understood why this branch's sales were so low. Rachel's enthusiasm was misdirected, and the other employees only did the bare minimum, ignoring their quotas. No promotions even if you work hard, because it's a remote island branch. This phrase became a demoralizing mantra that sapped everyone's motivation. 3 months passed since I joined the remote island branch. I finished my initial training and was about to start working independently. Since I was already used to working solo at the headquarters, I wasn't worried about that aspect. However, I encountered a problem here. "Alright, from now on, you're a fully fledged member of our team. But you still have a long way to go. To impress everyone at the headquarters, you must meet this quota. You want to return to the headquarters with outstanding achievements, right?" To be honest, I no longer had such ambitions. I realized that I had been influenced by the lack of motivation among the other employees. Reflecting on it now, it's clear that I found Rachel's well-meaning meddling to be annoying. Of course, I had no objections to being given the same quotas as the others. But I felt the need to correct her misunderstanding that I wanted to return to the headquarters. However, it's rare to find a boss who cares this much about one employee. Rachel must understand the dire state of this entire branch. Yet, she's still working so positively. I felt that telling her it's fine would be like denying her efforts, so I swallowed the words that were about to come out. One day, while continuing with my sales and system development duties, it was past 7 p.m. by the time I got back to the office due to a customer's schedule. No one in this office voluntarily stays late. I expected the office to be empty, but the lights were still on. Thinking someone had forgotten to turn them off, I opened the door to find Rachel staring at her computer under a single light, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. I couldn't help but speak up. "What are you doing here at this hour? Don't you have a young daughter? Shouldn't you be going home?" Rachel noticed my voice and turned towards me with a wry smile. "Oh, it's fine. Even though I'm a single mom, I live with my parents, and my daughter understands. I told you to go straight home, didn't I? Did you forget something?" Rachel had mentioned that she became a single mother after her husband passed away from an illness and now lives with her elderly parents and daughter. Although life would be easier in the city, Rachel's father, who lives with her, has an illness and is receiving treatment at the only hospital on this remote island. So, she chose to live here deliberately. Her father was adamant about not leaving for the city center, wanting to spend his last days at the remote island where he was born and raised. They couldn't afford the high costs of advanced medical care in the city, so home treatment was the main option. Rachel works so hard, even spinning her wheels, because she has a family to protect. Even if she's resented or complained about, she works late into the night for the sake of her beloved daughter and parents. I felt ashamed for ever thinking of Rachel as a nuisance. I sat down beside Rachel's desk and said, "I'm sure your daughter feels lonely, even if she doesn't say so. And this workload, it's not just your job. Is it? Let me help you. Let's at least finish the essential tasks." I then took half of the stacked documents. Rachel looked at me with surprise. I felt a connection to Rachel's daughter. Perhaps because I was raised by a single mother myself. My mother also worked tirelessly to raise me well, so she was rarely home. Knowing she worked hard for me, I never voiced my loneliness. So, I'm sure Rachel's daughter is also trying to be a good girl, even if she's lonely. As I sorted the documents, I asked Rachel, "How can you keep working so hard in this situation?" Rachel smiled softly and replied, "I want the big shots at the headquarters to recognize me. As the breadwinner, if I earn a lot, my family can live comfortably. And my late husband always said that if you smile, things will go well. So no matter how tough it gets, I never lose my smile. That's all there is to it." Rachel's words and her earnest demeanor deeply moved me. Though I felt ashamed of my past self, regretting it wouldn't change anything. So, I decided to start fresh from tomorrow. With that resolve, I finished the work in front of me and left the office by 8 p.m. The next day, I arrived at the office and started moving briskly to meet my assigned quotas. I approached the slacking employees and said, "If you're free, could you help with this? I've already reviewed it with Rachel. So it should only need minor adjustments." In reality, I was just returning the work that Rachel had been covering for the other employees. One of the slackers, Miles, came over and said, "But Rachel took it on, so she should handle it, right?" That might have been fine until now. But continuing like this would perpetuate a negative spiral where hard-working people get the short end of the stick. Rachel didn't take on extra work because she wanted to. I'm not just randomly assigning tasks. For example, these documents I handed to you, Miles, are actually your responsibilities. You can handle them quickly, can't you? Do you want to stay stagnant here? Personally, I'd hate to be outperformed by someone who was transferred from the headquarters, I said provocatively, watching Miles gulp. The next moment, Miles laughed loudly and said, "Wow, Liam, the new guy who's been here for 3 months, is telling me this? Guys, are we just going to sit around and watch this?" Then he went back to his desk and started working. His attitude seemed to influence the other employees, who followed suit, saying, "Yeah, he's right," and returned to their desks. Rachel observed all this quietly. In fact, she had told me something on the way out yesterday. Miles is a mood maker. He used to be very motivated and serious about his work. But he realized no one at the headquarters cares about the lowest sales branch. His motivation dropped, and he dragged everyone else down with him. But I think if we can just flip his switch, he could be amazing again. After that, Rachel continued to tell us about the characteristics of each employee. I took all that information to heart and thought about how to ignite each person's motivation. As a result, the employees influenced by Miles started working with a new vigor, as if their instincts had been awakened. Seeing such teamwork, which was rare in the city, filled me with a warm feeling. The people here must have been working while respecting each other's feelings and attitudes. That's why Miles, as a mood maker, was so important. A few hours later, I stood before Rachel to report on the day's work. Rachel received the report and, alternating between looking at me and the report, exclaimed in disbelief, "You completed a month's worth of targets in just one day? No way, this is unbelievable. The sales are at an all-time high. And you're indisputably number one. Who are you really? I heard you were demoted from the headquarters. But someone this capable being demoted doesn't make sense." Rachel then asked how I ended up assigned here. I hadn't planned to answer, but her persistent questions left me no choice. With a wry smile, I explained what had happened at the headquarters. The target Rachel mentioned was likely set by the headquarters, underestimating this branch due to its poor sales. For me, this task was simple enough to complete within a week, even if it took some time. This time, I did it in a day to boost everyone's motivation, which wasn't particularly extraordinary. Shane, who had sent me here, would probably say, "It's expected." While explaining my situation, Rachel suddenly stood up, visibly angry. She said it was an unfair transfer and that she would protest. But I calmed her down. "Thank you, but it's all right. At first, I was bewildered, but seeing you and everyone's attitude today, I realized I'm glad I came here. There's a spirit of cooperation and warm human relationships. Plus, living on an island is like enjoying a slow life. I don't want to go back to the headquarters, I want to work here with everyone. As I said, Rachel looked momentarily bewildered. However, she quickly broke into a beaming smile, patted my back, and said, "Looking forward to working with you. You're the shining star of this branch." 6 months had passed since I came to the remote island branch. Contrary to the belief that low sales were due to the employees' lack of motivation, the actual issue lay in the system. Headquarters and branches near cities could easily attract people, bringing in talented individuals. In contrast, rural and remote island branches constantly struggled with staffing issues, and this branch was no exception. Most skilled technicians preferred working at city branches or the headquarters, leaving us with very few proficient in programming. When I tweaked the system structure, sales increased significantly. The numbers spoke for themselves. Previously, our transactions were limited to within the remote island, but recently, we've been getting constant requests from the mainland to use the systems developed by our branch. I simply utilized the skills I had honed over the years, and with the efforts of my colleagues who went to the mainland for sales, we achieved these results together. Everyone was happy, and I felt satisfied contributing to the progress of IT on this remote island. One day, Rachel made an announcement. "Everyone, listen. Due to our significant increase in sales and contributions to system development, we're receiving special bonuses. And we've shed the shame of being the lowest grossing branch in the network. All thanks to everyone's hard work over the past few months." She suggested a celebratory party tonight, enthusiastically offering to treat everyone. Knowing Rachel was a single mother, we hesitated, but she insisted on sharing her bonus with everyone. Having learned that Rachel wouldn't back down once she decided on something, we all eventually accepted her offer. After work, we had our celebration at the best-rated barbecue place in the remote island. However, towards the end, Rachel stepped out with a pale face, clutching her phone. Concerned, I followed her and found her unusually distraught, shouting into her phone, "No, it can't be true. My father collapsed. Is there no way to save him?" Rachel was so panicked that, despite holding her phone to her ear, it was on speaker, and I could hear the conversation. Her father had collapsed at home and been rushed to the hospital. He was in critical condition, unconscious, and while they managed some emergency treatment, he needed surgery. But the remote island's only hospital had just one surgeon, Dr. Kenneth, who had identified the problem but found the surgery too complex for the nurses who had no experience with such cases. If only there were another surgeon. They could airlift him to a city hospital, but the helicopter had just left with a critically ill pregnant woman. Even at the earliest, it would take an hour for the helicopter to return. In this dire situation, Rachel, with tears streaming down her face, continued to plead with Dr. Kenneth over the phone. "Dr. Kenneth, please, save my father. I don't care how much it costs, just save him." Rachel's father was in critical condition, and Rachel seemed to be losing her composure. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, I approached Rachel. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but we need to get to your father quickly. I'll let Miles know about the bill and have him explain to everyone. They'll understand. Plus, I haven't had any alcohol, so I'll drive us right now." There was no time to persuade the stunned Rachel. I took her by the hand, helped her into my car, and we rushed to the hospital. When we arrived at the hospital room where Rachel's father had been taken, her mother and daughter were already there, staring at us. Dr. Kenneth explained the current situation as soon as Rachel arrived. It was as we feared. We could only hope her father would hold on until the helicopter returned. Realizing she might be witnessing her husband's final moments, Rachel's mother looked somber. Her daughter, still in elementary school, seemed confused as she looked back and forth between her mother and grandmother. I had no place to intervene. I didn't have the right to do anything. But I couldn't just stand by and watch. I'm a doctor. Although I'm currently working as an engineer under Rachel, I used to be an emergency physician. I have experience in surgery. "Dr. Kenneth, could I assist you?" Everyone turned to look at me. Dr. Kenneth, surprised, said, "What?" But when I showed my medical license, which I always carried with my ID, his expression changed. Immediately, an office staff member verified my credentials, confirming I was indeed a licensed doctor. Dr. Kenneth asked, "How long has it been since you last practiced?" It had been some time, but my body still remembered the routines and procedures from my days as a medical student, intern, and emergency physician. No, it was ingrained. "Yes, I can do it." With that single sentence, Dr. Kenneth nodded firmly. We quickly proceeded with the paperwork to contract me as a freelance doctor, and Dr. Samuel, the head of the hospital, pleaded, "Please, save her father." As everyone prayed, Rachel's father was sedated and taken into surgery. I worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Kenneth and the available nurses. Several hours later, as the sun was rising, the surgery was finally over. Rachel, who hadn't slept at all, ran towards me. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. "Liam, is he?" Hearing her weak voice, I could tell what a tough time she had been through in those hours. Wanting to reassure her, I smiled and said, "The surgery was a success. It'll take some time for him to wake up, and even then, he'll need to stay at a mainland hospital for further treatment and observation, but the worst is over." Hearing this, Rachel, who usually exuded strength, broke down like a child, sobbing and collapsing to the floor. "You're not just an amazing engineer, but also a doctor? Stop surprising me." As she sobbed, I gently rubbed her back until she calmed down. A year later, I left the company, much to everyone's regret. I decided to leave because of Dr. Samuel's persistent offers and the realization of the severe issues facing remote island healthcare. I had left medicine to escape the harsh realities of being an emergency physician. Witnessing tragic scenes and feeling hopeless had pushed me to my limit. Even though my dream was to save lives, I couldn't face my inner conflicts. After quitting medicine, I remembered my interest in programming from my student days and pursued it intensely. Around that time, a friend recommended me to the company. I never planned to return to medicine. But now, I realize I had been too self-focused and not empathetic enough towards patients. Now, I can face patients sincerely without feeling the fear I once did. I work as a general practitioner at the hospital and also collaborate with my former company on system development when I have time. Medical and IT fields may seem entirely different, but they are closely related. Nowadays, there are even universities where you can study both simultaneously. Here in Remote Island, I'm likely the only one capable of excelling in both fields. So, I feel most fulfilled now, using my skills for the benefit of everyone. One day, when everything seemed to be going smoothly, I received news that a family had come from the city to visit a girl hospitalized in the pediatric ward. Previously, another doctor had been in charge of her case, but with their retirement, I was appointed as the successor. Coincidentally, during my medical student days, I had researched the illness the girl was suffering from and even wrote my thesis on it. This might have influenced the decision to appoint me as her new doctor. The girl's family was originally from this remote island, but her father worked on the mainland, returning only once every few months. To my surprise, her father was Shane, the very person who had sent me to this remote island. Shane had already been informed by his wife about the change in the attending physician and, of course, knew it was me. I braced myself for the possibility of hearing more sarcastic remarks or demands to change the doctor. But instead, Shane nodded with respect and slowly began to speak. "I heard you've been researching my daughter's illness. You must have realized that the girl you are treating is my daughter." Indeed, I knew from her medical records that Shane was her father. But that didn't matter to me. If someone is in need right in front of me, I will lend a hand. That's all there is to it, I said with a smile. Tears welled up in Shane's eyes. "I regret what I did to you. I know an apology isn't enough, so feel free to resent me as much as you want. I originally came from this remote islands branch and was promoted to section chief at the headquarters. At that time, I was overwhelmed with my daughter's illness and focused solely on securing my position. After you left, Jessica told me that no one would follow me if I continued like that. I was surprised that the once timid Jessica had said something like that. Jessica had been burdened by guilt over my transfer, believing it was her fault. She had tried to negotiate with upper management to bring me back and had confronted Shane with her opinions. This gave her confidence, and now she could express her views. Shane had since stepped down from his position at the headquarters and returned to this branch. Is that okay? What's the point of earning lots of money if I can't be there for my daughter when she needs me? Rachel told me about her father's situation. Shane said with a melancholic smile. Hearing him speak this way, I saw a reflection of my past self, who couldn't empathize with others because I was too focused on my struggles. It made me realize that Shane was also a troubled human being. Without saying more, Shane placed his hand over his heart and said, "Please take care of my daughter," before entering the hospital room. I don't believe that everyone can always understand each other, and I know that once tangled threads can't easily be untangled. But if we don't forget to respect one another, understanding is possible. I realize that acknowledging others while recognizing oneself is the best way to bridge the gap between us.